Hi everyone, welcome to my channel and welcome to a book shopping vlog. Before we get started, my name is Emily and I just want to say thank you so much for watching today's video and I hope you like it. I was in Boston this past weekend, and whenever I visit a new city, I love to find bookstores there to visit and browse and sometimes buy books from. Not only was I in Boston this past weekend, but I was also in Boston 2 weeks ago. We had to travel to Boston for both of those weekends for friends and family's weddings. So the first time we were there, I went to two bookstores. We went to Beacon Hill Books and Coffee, or Books and Cafe, and we also went to Postman Books. When we went 2 weeks ago, I was on a mission to buy a specific book, and I did end up doing that. Both of those bookstores were so cute. I absolutely loved Beacon Hill Books and Coffee. That is a bookstore and cafe all in one, and we didn't get to eat there, but I've heard really good things about the food, and the atmosphere of that bookstore was just so cute. It was decorated so well. It was several different floors, so like you kind of just kept going up and up, and there was more books like the higher up you went. I think the cafe is actually on the ground floor, like kind of in the basement. We didn't get to eat there, like I said, but overall, I loved Beacon Hill Books and Coffee. Unfortunately, they didn't have the book I was looking for. Ended up walking from Beacon Hill, which is an area in Boston, through the Boston Common to Postman Books, which is on Newbury Street. Postman Books luckily had the book I was looking for, so I ended up purchasing that. And because we were there for a wedding, I wasn't able to go to the other two bookstores that I had wanted to visit because we had to get ready for the wedding. I knew we were heading back this past weekend, so I was like, no worries, we'll visit the other ones that I want to go to when we're there next time. So that's exactly what we did. Before I start talking about the bookstores we visited, I wanted to talk about the books that were on my list and on my fall TBR that I was planning on buying. I'm kind of wary to buy new books right now because, as you can see, I have a ton of books on my physical TBR behind me. This is kind of my TBR cart where I keep most of my physical TBR books. I do have physical TBR books on some of my other bookshelves as well, but most of the ones that I want to read like soon are here. And this year I've really been sucked into new releases and like new release hype. And I have like a lot of backlist books that I want to read, but I haven't been reading them because I've been sucked into the hype of new releases a lot this year. Because of that, I didn't want to buy too many, and pretty much all of the books that were on my list for book shopping this past weekend were new releases. I didn't want to buy all of them, so I limited myself to 2 books. This was the list of the books that I was planning on browsing for at least, and then, deciding on which ones I wanted to buy. So I had Alchemy of Secrets on there by Stephanie Garber. I had Soul Searching by Lila Sage on my list. I had Hot Wax by ML Rio on my list, and that is the same author as If We Were Villains, which was one of my favorite reads from last year, which is kind of why I was looking forward to potentially buying Hot Wax. Also on the list was The Academy by Ellen Hilderbrand, and before I even started shopping this weekend, I decided I wasn't going to buy that one because I actually had started the audiobook earlier that week, and I thought to myself, I don't need to buy this book right now. I was able to start the audiobook for free via Spotify Premium, so I don't have to buy that one just yet. I had another one on the list called How Sweet It Is, and that is a romance, and I heard the opening scene starts on Halloween. Or maybe the male main character is a horror writer, so that was kind of why it was giving me like fall vibes. So I put that one on the list because I had quickly seen something about it, but I wasn't super interested in that one. I just wrote it down just in case I found it and decided I wanted to buy that one. I also had The Second Death of Locke on my list, which was it's about like knights and mages and things like that. I feel like it is the perfect atmosphere to read during the fall. So that one was on my list. And then last but not least, I also had Paladin's Grace on the list by TJ Kingfisher, I think the author is called. And that's also about like knights and paladins, and it's like a romance, a little bit of a fantasy romance, I think. So those were the 7 books that I was considering buying. Getting into the actual vlog now, Saturday is when we really were able to start exploring Boston and the areas where these bookstores were. I had never heard of this, but there is a regatta that takes place every fall in Boston called the Head of the Charles, and it's for college and university rowing. So we checked that out first, and then we headed to Newbury Street and we went to Trident Booksellers and Cafe. And this was the 3rd bookstore that I had wanted to visit in Boston. They had a really cute cafe area, but we ended up sitting at the bar and we got some breakfast, and then I started browsing for the books that were on my list. This bookstore had the most amount of books I had ever seen in a bookstore that wasn't a Barnes & Noble. They had so much stock. Not only did they have a ton of different books of every genre, but they had so many copies of each book also, which is really nice to see because, hopefully those books are selling and people are supporting this bookstore. I saw some books that are on my radar, but like not that I wanted to buy anytime soon. I got distracted for a little while by some of the horror books because I was thinking maybe I want to read a horror book this fall, but then I reminded myself, nope, stick to your list. You have specific books that you wanted to buy. I could have spent all day in here. Actually, they had so many books and they all were just like, it was so fun to browse around. I found 3 of the books that were on my list, and like I said, I limited myself to 2, so I had my husband help me decide between the 3. We then headed up to the north end of Boston and we visited I Am Books. This bookstore had open air windows in the front and they had shelves that spelt out the name of the bookstore, which was so cute. This bookstore didn't have as much stock as Trident did, but they had a lot of options. I found some of my favorites there. I was almost tempted to buy another book here. I found 1 copy of The Academy like hidden on a lower shelf, but like I said, I thought to myself, I don't need this, I'm listening to the audiobook right now. So after browsing around that store for a little while, we then wrapped up our bookstore trip, headed back to our Airbnb, and started getting ready for the wedding, which was the real reason why we were in Boston for the weekend. I feel like both of the trips to bookstores I had in Boston were super successful, and I really enjoyed browsing around those bookstores, exploring the city. It's nice to go to a new location because normally when I go book shopping, I go to the Barnes & Noble near me, or I take a trip into New York because I live near New York. So exploring new bookstores, a new city was really, really fun, and I did end up buying those 2 books. I also got a Halloween themed tote bag from Trident because I love a good tote bag. I couldn't pass it up and I needed one for some of my stuff. So I got this Halloween themed one and I figured I can use this each year in like October and spooky season. The first book I ended up buying, because like I said, my husband helped me decide between the 3 books. The first was Soul Searching by Lila Sage. A moment for this cover. I feel like this book has gotten a lot of hype on social media, specifically because of this cover. And I know we say we don't judge books by their covers, but this one is just too cute to pass up. I love the artwork of Lila Sage's books and the covers of each of her books. I just feel like they are so well done. And this is a paranormal romance, which is perfect to read in October for spooky season. So I definitely want to read this one before Halloween, and I've heard really good things about it. This takes place in the small town of Sweetwater Peak, Wyoming. And I believe they are being kind of like pushed together by the ghosts in their living situation. And they're kind of investigating like the paranormal aspects of what's going on in this town. And again, just this cover, I absolutely love it. I feel like I couldn't pass it up because of the cover. It's just so aesthetic and I just really like it. And the second book that my husband picked out for me was Alchemy of Secrets by Stephanie Garber. I read the other 2 trilogies by this author, so Caraval and Once Upon a Broken Heart. If you don't know, Stephanie Garber usually writes books that are very like fantastical and whimsical. It feels like you've kind of opened a book and fallen into a fairy tale. And this is her first adult fantasy book. This one takes place in like a vintage Hollywood-esque setting, and it follows our main character. I actually forgot what this was about until I read the book while I was in the bookstore. Like I read the dust jacket. And this follows our main character who is told that she'll die by the next day at midnight, I think. Somebody tells her that she will die at midnight tomorrow unless she finds an ancient object called the alchemical heart. So because she's looking for this artifact, because she's told that if she doesn't find it, she will not make it, she ends up working with a mysterious stranger who helps her kind of navigate this old Hollywood-esque setting to find this artifact. I thought this was a standalone, but I watched somebody else's reading vlog and they said that it is not a standalone, and it's actually the first book in a series. So I'm glad I know that going into it, so I'm not disappointed when I get to the end and I realize that it's actually a series. The book I didn't end up getting was The Second Death of Locke, and I actually watched another reading vlog this morning while I was eating breakfast and somebody was reading it, and that was actually Rachel from Raven Haired Reader, and I'm like kind of disappointed that I didn't end up buying this one because it sounded so good when she was talking about it. So I might have to make another trip to the bookstore and buy that one at some point, or maybe I can check it out of my library because like I said, I'm trying to not buy too many books because I have a lot and I don't have a huge book room. I just have the shelf behind me and I have one other shelf in my bedroom. So maybe I'll put that one on hold at my library, like I said. I hope you liked today's vlog. It was a little different than other vlogs that I've done because I actually forgot my camera when I went to Boston, so most of those clips were filmed on my phone. but I hope you liked it anyway. Sorry for the different format if you've watched one of my other videos before. If you visited any other cities recently and visited bookstores while you were there, let me know. Let me know some of your favorite bookstores, maybe in the city where you live or the town where you live. I hope you liked today's video. If you did, please do all those classic YouTube things like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.